Thank you, Val. Thank you so much, and thanks to Garrett and the entire team. Thank you so much to Log Cabin Republicans, and each of you that have traveled near and far to be here. I am a fifth-generation Coloradan. A lot of my family is in Pagosa Springs, so thank you. I know that's a distance, but appreciate you being here. And what I'm really here to talk about is not just me or my role as a Douglas County Commissioner, but really about each of you, and to tell you how important and significant each of you is. I know there's a word that has always meant a lot to me and it meant a lot to our community, and I know I'm relatively new in this community, but I want to say it to you, that I am proud of each and every one of you. And the decision you made and the journey that you've been through was not easy, and it's because of you that my journey was so much easier. So a little bit about me. I am a county commissioner in District 1 in Douglas County. We are a conservative Republican county. We represent about 400,000 people. I am the first Latino elected commissioner down there. I'm also the first member of the queer community elected in Douglas County. But I'll tell you, my journey was a long one. I just came out at the age of 46. So my journey was kind of like J.R.R. Tolkien, like just very long getting to that point. And for many years, I was married for 20 years to a female. I have 3 kids, 18, 16, and almost 6. He says he's 5.5, so you can't forget the half. So technically, you got to be very careful about that half. But love and adore my family. They've always meant so much to me. But it was interesting, we all went through this horrible scenario, no matter where you were in the world, with COVID-19. But most people don't know what role counties play when it comes to a public health crisis. But as it turns out, health departments have too much power in the state of Colorado. And really those health directors can make a lot of big decisions about your lives. And so, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were with Tri-County Health, Arapahoe and Adams County, deeply Democrat areas, really struggling to find our way with Tri-County when our belief was free, open, follow the science, but be thoughtful and ensure that people have the freedom and the right to live their lives the way they see fit, the freedom to raise their kids as they see fit. Basic Republican principles we all know and love, but we were really pushed up against during that time. So here I was managing a global pandemic on a local level, trying to form a new health department. We now today have our own Douglas County Health Department, which we're really excited about. But right during the pandemic, I lost my father. And I didn't lose him to COVID-19. I lost him to a massive heart attack. And he was one of those that he was really smart and really cautious. And so he was looking at the news and watching TV and thinking, if I go to the doctor's office, I'm gonna catch it, I'm gonna get sick, something bad's gonna happen, so I'm just gonna wait. Well, it turns out, he died of it was a myocardial infarction, which was literally like your heart exploding. So there was no way for him to be cared for, but had he gone in earlier, he would have been diagnosed with hypertension, been on blood thinners, and he'd be with us today. So I still have a lot of probably underlying frustration with the media and our medical system for encouraging older adults to avoid preventative care during that time, which was so critically important. So managing a global pandemic, my father passes, and as it turns out, had a brand new little baby at the time. So he was only a couple years old, but I'm one of those weird cautionary tales. I got the snip after the first 2. And my longtime wife pulled me into the master bedroom and said, "Hey, so we're pregnant." And it was an interesting moment. I didn't know what she was going to say, and I made the mistake of putting on my glasses, going to Google, and just saying, "Oh well, no, you're just premenopausal," which is the dumbest thing you could possibly ever say to anybody at any time. Not at all. I've got the JD, not the MD, so never should have said that. But she was right, I was wrong. Very much pregnant, but here we are in the middle of this global crisis, and I've got a little boy, a lost dad, and trying to really manage this large county of 400,000, keep businesses open, keep people moving and living their lives. And for the first time in my life, I really stopped. The world kind of stopped, and maybe you all were sort of there too, but really took stock of my own life for the first time. And I grew up in a very Christian, conservative home. There was one way, and it's you get married, and you go to law school, and you have these kids, and and all of that is great. I have no regrets about my life. My life was always fully true. There were missing pieces that I never fully recognized. And, growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was that era of the AIDS epidemic and Ryan White and people dying. And if you do anything with anybody, you're gonna die. And by the way, if you go to church, you might be shunned or excommunicated, or you're not necessarily welcome in your own community. So for me, in my mind, it was like, well, I'm a Christian, so I must be straight, and I must go down this path, and I did. And what's difficult for me is what I finally realized is I'm this really pedagogical, bizarre word, which is I'm an aesthete, which means I'm drawn to internal and external beauty regardless of gender. So it was a little more difficult for me because I'm not fully gay, I'm not fully straight, I'm somewhere in the middle, like a lot of people on the Kinsey scale. But that made it difficult because, it always felt right and was right to be with a female. And I will tell you to this day, I love and adore that woman with my whole heart. She is the amazing mother of my children, and we have a really good relationship. It's different, it's not the same as it used to be, but it's better. But going back to that period during the pandemic, walking forward, suddenly I realized I need to be honest with myself. And then once you're honest with yourself, you do the therapy and you go through the things, hopefully. But during that process, I realized, well, look, I gotta be honest with myself, then I need to be honest with my wife, with my kids, with my community, and then with these 400,000 people that I represent. So fast forward to October of, I guess, 22, and it's National Coming Out Day, and I'm up for re-election in a very conservative county. And my campaign team is now fully aware of what's going on with me personally, and they're like, what are you doing? Man, you can't come out now right before an election. And I was very clear with them. I said, look, I would rather lose as myself than win with a veneer. And they're like, well, you're great, you'll never win in this county. Well, I did. So, it was bizarre. I ended up with 104,000 votes, which was more than I had in the previous election. Came out very publicly on National Coming Out Day in October, and then fast forward to November, and we were able to cross that victory line. But one of the things I wanted to share with you is the reason I'm not just saying I'm proud of you, I really am proud of you. Who knows what resonates with another individual the most in terms of, when you share like a feeling or emotion or something like, usually people say hate, love would resonate really high. Anybody have any other guesses what resonates the most when you're interacting with somebody? It's authenticity. Nobody wants a Ken doll, and everybody can spot a fraud a million miles away. And what's so powerful about the conservative, I would say queer community, is that you are 100% yourselves, and people see that. There's a reason why people are drawn to our spaces and our clubs and the places that we enjoy. It's because there's this sense of, I can be myself in this space. I don't have to put on this image for people to like me. And that was part of my message to the community. So this might be a little bit surprising, but I actually don't believe in anybody having to come out. It's one of those things where I don't think straight people go into the boardroom and say, oh, hey, this is, here's how I feel and this is what I do. Straight people don't have to do that. So why should queer people, right? You don't have to go out and publicly identify personal issues. But that said, for any of us that occupy a public space, and being a public figure, for me, representation matters. So going out into a public space and saying, hey, I'm a member of the queer community, really wasn't about me. It was about all these people I represent that may not be very public about who they are and what they are, and may be shunned or confused or uncertain. One of the things we learned quite a bit about in Douglas County from our human services work is that there's a lot of suicidal ideation that is beneath the surface. Who knows the demographic that is most likely to have suicidal ideation or commit suicide? Does anybody know?
21%.
No, the demographic, but yeah, does anybody anybody know the demographic? So
Trans.
it's white males between the ages of 34 and 55. Suburban white males, which is hard to believe, but very high up there are veterans and members of the LGBTQ community. So for me, as a member of the faith community, I'm still a member of Cherry Hills Community Church. I go in there and sometimes I see empty seats, people that have left for a variety of reasons. And what I think about are the men and women that might have been part of the queer community, that might have been LGBTQ plus, that didn't feel comfortable, or they were shunned by their family, or they took their own lives because they didn't feel like there was that connection with their families or the God that they loved.
Or the preacher sucked.
Or the preacher, what the pastor is saying to them, absolutely. And I'll just say, for me, everybody has a unique relationship with spirituality, and some people don't have one at all, and I respect that. For me, I am a Christian, and the God that I believe in loves each of you and loves me completely. And I will tell you, I was at Cherry Hills with my 3 kids this last week, and the woman who organized my wedding 20 years ago, Roxanne Dennett, she was our prayer and care coordinator, planned our whole wedding, got it all pulled together. She's still there running the church. And I walk in and I'm always a little nervous because, you come into a church and you don't know, you know how it is. When you come out, not everybody is as receptive as maybe they could be. And you get the one-offs that aren't really with you. Roxanne walked right up to me and she hugged me for about 20 seconds. And that may not seem like 20 seconds is a long time to get a hug from anybody. But she did that, and she just leaned back and she said, "I'm so glad that you're here." And for me, that really resonated, especially with my 3 kids, for them to see that and for me to know that that's the Jesus I believe in, is the God that says, "I just love you, no judgment, and I'm glad you're here." So anyway, that's a little bit about my journey. I want to talk a little bit about what I have had to encounter and have had the honor to encounter as an elected official that's part of the queer community, and specifically talk about PrideFest from this last year. So PrideFest came to Douglas County, and it's been coming for a few years. A couple years ago, there was an unfortunate situation where there was a nipple slip in the middle of a drag performance, and a prosthetic nipple popped out, and the community was outraged. Happened in front of kids, and at no time on any level do I support that. Nobody supports that. Members of the gay community don't support, the LGBTQ community don't support that. Faith-based community doesn't support that. Everybody admitted that was wrong, but it definitely created this fear of energy and vitriol on both sides. One side saying we have a right to express ourselves, the other side saying, well, you can't expose kids to inappropriate and lewd behavior. Both are accurate. And the reason why each of you is so important and why I appreciate what Val does so much and this entire group is you can speak into this space from a platform of trust. Conservatives and Christians, you have a platform to be able to talk into that space that other people do not. You also have an opportunity to speak into the LGBTQ place when others do not. So it's this beautiful bridge. So much of my life, it's not about titles and ego and getting to the next level. I don't care. I was asked to run for Congress this last year. That ain't me. Right now, my focus is on my family. And that, for me, that's just a title. Right now, my goal is impact, purpose, making a difference. And each of you is capable of stepping into this space, speaking out, and making a difference. And what I said was, there was a lot, we had a big group in Castle Rock saying, we don't want PrideFest in our community, period. They've blown it, they blew it last year, wasn't right, don't want them here. I can't tell you how thrilled I was to see Val and see log cabin Republicans there. The Libertarian group was there. We had the Heart Right at PrideFest. We had churches at PrideFest that were saying, hey, we love you, and we know that God made you for a purpose and he doesn't make mistakes. It was a beautiful intersection just walking around and seeing that bridge occur. Unfortunately, we did have some really strong protests. So, out there in the kind of the dirt parking lot, there was a group of people in white hooded masks, kind of shouting and honking their horns and yelling, protect our kids. And I have zero fear of those. I have zero fear and frankly zero respect. Not only is the white hood probably not the most appropriate signal to anyone, but to wear a mask to a place where people have had to fight through almost literal hell to be themselves. The bravery of the people inside the gates to be their authentic selves is so much more powerful to me than individuals wearing a mask shouting something. Not to say that their point is invalid. At the end of the day, the bridge for me was, I'm gonna support the Constitution. As a conservative Republican, I support liberty principles. I support the notion of freedom of speech, just like I support the Second Amendment. The rest of the Constitution, people have a right to speak out as they see fit. So I'm not gonna ban PrideFest from Castle Rock. And we had the opportunity to do that, just shut it down and take the lawsuits or whatever that would be. I'm really pleased one of my colleagues, Commissioner Thomas, agreed with me that this was the right space to open up to our constitutional principles. But we didn't have the right legally to limit it by time, place, and manner. We said, under no circumstances can any sort of free speech be lewd, inappropriate, anything that would damage or impair children or impact them in a negative way. And we had agreement from the organizers to commit to that. So the actual event, the organizers did great. And the drag queens that did show up, there was no touching, there was no engagement, there were no tips. They were performing, they did their art. You may agree or disagree with me, but I don't think drag is a crime. I think it is a type of artwork and expression that people are entitled to, and I fully support it. Like I would support going to the Louvre and seeing the Mona Lisa. Maybe a different level. There's good and bad art, and there's good and bad drag. And we saw a really bad example of drag at our Douglas County Fairgrounds. But this year, it was fantastic and very kid-friendly and very positive. We had a group of people stand up, and they had T-shirts that said "Protect Children." And my comment to the organizers were so upset about that. They're like, "Why are these people here with shirts that said Protect Children?" Now, this was a separate protest group, and they had their faces shown, and they just, members of the faith community. And on the back of their shirts, it said, "God loves you, and so do I." And the organizers were really upset about that. Now, I don't know if you remember that, but my response was, that's not mutually exclusive from your principles. You want to protect kids too. This message that God loves you and so do I don't find any offense with. What I was bothered by is they stood up and blocked the performance. In my mind, that is you're blocking free speech. Let people say what they want to say. But certainly a peaceful demonstration is also perfectly appropriate in my mind. So both occurred. PrideFest will be back this year. I will be there. I'm sure Log Cabin Republicans will be there, and we're excited to do that. But my job is not to focus on people will drag me and praise me all day on Twitter and whatever. I mean, the media will do what they do. Easiest thing in my role is to take my ego, put it in a jar, set it on the table, and let people do whatever they want with it. My focus is just do the right thing. What's the next right thing? The next right thing is demonstrating God's love, liberty principles, showing up in a difficult space as a member of the queer community and saying all are welcome. But making sure we're putting guardrails on inappropriate behavior so that we are protecting kids. We're making sure that at no time our minor is exposed to something that's inappropriate. But I'll just close, and I want to open it up for questions too. I'm an open book. Here, the other nice thing about being in my role, I have zero secrets, so it's really nice to be an elected official that's just an open book, so feel free to ask me anything. But last summer, I was invited to, I think it might have been the first queer prom in Douglas County. And I apologize, but I did not know what that was. And I looked into it a little bit, and it was an opportunity for members of the queer community that are kids to be able to go to a prom, go to a dance with somebody that they chose. And in a lot of schools, charter, religious, and even in the public schools, you don't have a right to, you got to take somebody of the opposite gender, and that's kind of it. Or it's frowned upon or looked down upon, depending on the school. At this queer prom, you can bring whoever you want and have a good time and enjoy yourself. So I thought, well, what a great opportunity to open up our fairgrounds and give kids the opportunity to have a prom. And for many of us, maybe in this room, maybe you didn't get to go to your prom at your high school with the person that you wanted to go with. So I showed up. I was there with a guy that's now become a very special friend of mine, Branson. Amazing guy from Southern California who's 28, a little bit younger than me, but met him online, as many of us do. But he showed up and said, "Hey, I want to support you and support the work that's happening here." So we showed up, and I think I was probably wearing this exact same jacket. I probably wear this way too much. These kids were walking in and really enjoying themselves, and I was a little bit concerned because we had gone through so many protests, and I wasn't sure if this would be really a safe area for kids to be able to have a good time. And suddenly I see this big armored truck come in, and it's got patriotic stickers and MAGA stickers, and I'm very, pro-Trump, and I'm like, okay, that's my people, but it's, are they going to be, what's going to happen when this big armored truck pulls up to the queer prom at Douglas County Fairgrounds? And part of me, from a commissioner standpoint, steps back and says, okay, is there, don't want to be hyper vigilant, but shootings occur and bad things happen. And the car parks right in front of the the sidewalk to the entry, and this huge guy, I mean, he was probably 280 pounds, has on a backward bandana with, very patriotic, very, I think, of Trump on the side, gets out of the car, and he walks around to the side of his armored car, opens it up, and he lets out his daughter and her partner. And for me, it was such an impactful moment because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I'm always trying to be cognizant of the potential danger to my citizens. But here is a hard-right member of the Republican conservative community that said, I want to create a safe space for my child to be able to enjoy a prom. So I really respect that, and I think, again, that's that kind of love and authenticity that we all really can operate within and appreciate, and each of you can play a role in doing that, not only for adults, but for the young people in our community in a way that's appropriate for them. So again, I just want to thank each of you for your journey. Thank you for making my journey easier. I'm very pleased and honored to be here. And again, thank Log Cabin Republicans for having me. And I'll open it up for any Q&A. Questions, comments, thoughts?
When's PrideFest?
What's that?
When's PrideFest?
I don't know if I have the date in front of me, but it's always in the summer. Val, you probably know.
Usually,
I've been to downtown Denver's Pride twice now.
It's usually after Denver's.
It's gross.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, this
But-
is very just for families. And do you have it? Yeah.
21st, 22nd, 23rd.
Okay. Well, come down. I mean,
Okay.
I'd love to see all of you down there. If you have an opportunity, it'd be great to see you and get a chance to catch up.
Usually have two. The 21st of June.
Is it June this year? Okay. I thought it was August last year. Was it later?
It was later last year. That's,
Okay.
Denver?
Oh, you're talking about.
Oh, I was talking about Denver.
That's Denver's. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you're talking about Douglas.
I was gonna say that's kind of
Yeah.
brave of them to do
Oh.
it that close to Denver.
Yeah, it's.
They always stagger it so they don't always occur at the
They
same
don't want to
time.
steal each other's thunder.
Yes.
That's why Pride goes for 12 months
Well,
now.
it's normally been called Castle Rock Pride. I believe they're trying to move it towards a Douglas County Pride. So we'll see. I don't know if they've actually made that switch yet or not, but I believe it's coming in later summer. Usually, I think it was August last year. So, what other?
It was August.
Was it? Yeah. Yeah. What other questions you guys have? Comments?
You answered everyone's question.
Yeah, quiet group. Okay. Well, thanks again. Yes or yeah?
I'll throw one in. I'm not an American, but my wife is. And I'm trying to understand that America's democracy is really a shining light for the whole world. And it would appear for the outsiders that this go around, you have two presidential candidates who have faults. And you look at the prior American presidents, and they are incredible. Not only were they great Americans, they, through their conduct, through their policies, through leading the nation from immense difficulties, they made America better, they made the world better. And, I don't understand how 350 million people, it would appear, not just to Canadians, Europeans, the rest of the world, see, you know, the richest country in the world, smartest people, great technology, great universities, should be able to have better candidates than these
Exactly.
two. So help me understand.
Yeah.
We can't understand that, and I suspect many Americans don't like that choice, because each candidate has significant issues which are much more severe than prior candidates.
I really like that question, and I'm not gonna act like I have all the answers, but I do have the answer that's settled in my mind. And I know it's different than what we talked about, but the easy answer is the fringe controls government. So you have the toxic agitators on both sides of the aisle, the super far extreme, that they go to caucus and they go to assembly and they go, so when you first start running for office, that's where you gotta start. You know, normally now with open primaries, it's a little bit different now. People are petitioning, you have more, you know, Colorado, I'm fifth generation, Colorado has always been very purple, very unaffiliated, very independent. That pendulum can swing right or left on a dime. I know it feels
It used to
very
be red.
left now. It's probably not as left as you think. Especially on, I mean, you want to talk about substantive issues on LGBTQ. I mean, our focus has been crime, homelessness, and property taxes. I mean, you will not find a more conservative county on property taxes than Douglas County. Well, guess what? The average Coloradan really cares about this being the highest property tax season on record. And we gave $37.8 million back to our citizens and stayed out of debt. We still have a balanced budget. That's the government that people want, I believe. And I think Coloradans still want that, even though it feels blue. But to get to a place of power where you are an elected official, man, it's tough right now to be just a reasonable collaborator that can bring people together. You're seeing a lot of bomb throwers, a lot of people that don't have voting records or any sort of record of achievement that are just loud. They're just loud, and they're good at manipulating social media and the media in general. So I think that wasn't a short answer, sorry. But I think, you know, bad things happen when good people are silent, and it takes people like you to say, you know what, I'm not gonna just run away from the fray. I'm gonna step in to the conflict, step into the fray. Because you might not care about politics, but politics always cares about you, and they're paying attention. So I think it's reasonable people stay involved. Yeah.
What led to your decision to split from Tri-County Health? Was it several different missteps from Tri-County, or do you have one specific reason?
Yeah, so we became part of Tri-County when we were 6,000 people. But back in 1966, it was the Platte River flood, and so Arapahoe and Adams were these huge counties. We got sort of looped in as the stepchild. Well, now being 400,000, with a very different demographic, different philosophies and governance, being pulled into this conglomerate made zero sense. And so, you know, we saw that play out where you had one public health director, it was the state's largest health department, making decisions for, you know, over 1 million people. I mean, it was really bizarre when suddenly they were just saying, hey, you gotta shut your business down. You have to stay home. Kids have to stay home from school. Well, that just wasn't our view. I mean, we knew that, and what was funny is, as a Republican, you know, we were getting attacked by the left saying, well, you guys are just, you know, hard right, troglodytes, you're not paying attention to the science, you're not paying attention to the facts. Actually, we were watching our epidemiology dashboard every day. Every morning, we would wake up, look at that, monitor the issues. Now, the problem was people did not bifurcate between severity and cases. So what happened with the left was they saw cases go up, they're like, shut it down. Republicans were like, well, there's cases, but there's no severity. We're not seeing deaths or hospitalizations in our county, so why are we closing down businesses permanently? So we're just common sense Republicans, and we use common sense. The left did not like that, and Tri-County Health did not like that. So eventually we just said, look, we need to chart our own course. So, yeah. What else? Anything?
Not necessarily your question, but I have friends that they work at school districts in Douglas County, and So Douglas County, I guess the school districts were a lot of the school districts were like trying to follow each other and try to see what other school districts nearby were doing. Was that what was happening in Douglas County, or
With regard to what?
as far as masking for kids and?
Yeah, I mean, we're separate from the Board of Education,
Mhm.
and so they were making their independent decisions at that point. But again, we weren't seeing, I mean, here's a specific example. I would go out in public during the pandemic, and I had a suburban mom saying, you're killing thousands of kids. Why are you letting people, out in public? And I would say, well, with all due respect, ma'am, just looking at the statistics, we've had one death in a year and a half of a person under 18, and he had a co-occurring morbidity. So, again, it's not, it's just looking at the facts. We're not killing thousands of people. We're actually making sure our kids can get to school. So that was, and thankfully, a lot of kids in Douglas County haven't had that education gap that many others have. There's a couple of years of their lives in other places that they're missing. So, anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks so much, you guys.
And we are going to talk a little bit about caucus in a little bit, which is a good way to, if we want to really make a difference, we all need to be involved. So we'll talk about that in a second. Right now, we'll turn the floor over to Rich Guggenheim, who is the chapter leader of the Colorado Gays Against Groomers. So, Rich.
Oh, I love the hat. I love the hat.
Love that.
I'm gonna start selling these hats. I could make some cash off of these.
Do it.
And Eli Bazan hates this, so that's okay. Piss in his Cheerios any day, I'll do it. Also, man, we have some similarities, and I am from Southwest Colorado. I'm from Dolores. It's about 3 blocks wide and 14 blocks long, depending on how swollen the river is. Don't tell California or Texas that side of Colorado exists. It's God's country. They can have Cortez. And like you, I moved back to Colorado from Idaho. I had gone to the University of Idaho to get my PhD in molecular pathology, and was a professor. Got my PhD and tenure all within 2 weeks of each other. So my brain was fried, and then COVID happened. And COVID as a pathologist was a very interesting time. COVID as a professor was even more interesting. And I decided it's time to come back home, because my mom also passed away from cancer, not from COVID. So I decided it was time to come home, be closer to the family, and ditch academia, make more money working for the state of Colorado in the Department of Agriculture. So that's a little bit about me. One of the things I absolutely love about working for the state is when I started doing this stuff with Gays Against Groomers, people like Heidi Beadle and Ray Manzari started coming after me. Who knows who they are? A couple of you know who they are. I know Valdemar knows who Heidi Beadle is. He's a great person.
Boo.
She came to our barbecue.
Every time he comes up to me, he's got a phone in my face. I'm like, you know what? If you want an interview, all you gotta do is send me an email. I'll probably say no, but they doxed me.
Yeah.
And they went after me and listed where I work, which is Colorado Department of Agriculture, and they were like, he's engaging in discriminatory behavior and stuff, and I actually got a corrective action. Because the Department of Agriculture is saying, Rich, you're inhibiting the government's ability to effectively do their job. Guess what happened yesterday while I was at the state capitol?
What?
Phil Weiser got served.
Yay!
You know how you hold these people accountable? You hold them accountable by litigation. And if they're gonna infringe upon your First Amendment rights, the only way to fix it is to sue. And I want to tell you something. The more they come after you, the more you got to fight back. Because I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing with Gays Against Groomers. How many of you have heard about Gays Against Groomers before? Man, we need you to get up and join, especially on your side of the state, because I don't know, like, my niece has a daughter, so I'm a gunkle. They live in Areola. Love the name of the town, by the way. And she's like, I think I'm gonna drag my daughter to school in Utah. I'm not sending them to public school in Colorado. Can't blame you. And I'm gonna talk about what's going on in Colorado right now, but it is something where you have to get involved. Your voice is so important, and it's intimidating. Believe me, it's intimidating. Eli Bazan he's a bully. And he'll come up and get in your face, and he'll provoke you. He'll try to silence you. You know, when you talked about those people in the white t-shirts, I have to take a little issue with that because Parasol Patrol does the exact same thing. They're fascists. And as a person myself that believes in the principles of the First Amendment and the liberties and freedoms that come along with that, we have to make it clear that even though you may disagree with what somebody is saying, the First Amendment still applies to us. And I said that yesterday. Leslie Harrod on the floor was saying that dead naming or misgendering a person is the equivalent to using the N-word. Okay. And then she said, and you wouldn't call me the N-word because it's against the First Amendment, and the First Amendment doesn't protect you against hate speech. I actually have to send her an email with a Supreme Court case that said that the First Amendment does not limit your ability to say stuff, even if it is crass or offensive. This coming from the person who kicked out Christina Goki for testifying on 1071 and referring to this Tierra Latrice Kelly as Dwayne Powell. Who was she to talk to us about the First Amendment? So what I really want to say is, if you value your First Amendment rights and the things that I'm going to talk about today, you got to get involved also. And I know a lot of people are like, man, Rich, I got kids, I got family, I got work. And I like to tell people, if you got time to bang out a social media post, you have the time to send your representatives a letter. You can email them. I work for the state of Colorado. You know how many damn emails I get every day? It's probably close to 100. You too. You're a county commissioner. We're accountable to you as public servants. And I do my job more effectively when you engage with it. So please get engaged. And off to that. So Gays Against Groomers. We're actually a 501c4, and since I have an elected official in the House, a little drop in the little thing here, we're doing candidate endorsements this year. Valdemar, I have not seen your application. We are a nonprofit group of lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgender people who oppose the recent trend of indoctrinating, sexualizing, and then medicalizing children under the guise of LGBTQIA+. And I put together, thank you, I put together a fantastic PowerPoint, some of the graphic images. So the things that we've been doing, the medicalization and sterilizing of our children. And gender affirming care is not care. It is barbarism. It is mutilation. It leads to lifelong health problems. Lupron causes sterility. It causes bone density problems, can lead to heart attack. We're doing this to children. We do think that there are problems with drag queen story time and these drag queens reading to children. We believe it's a form of indoctrination. And it leads, they're doing this to children as young as 2. I don't believe with Gays Against Groomers that Pride is something that children belong at. Pride started as a revolution, a sexual revolution. And when you go to Denver Pride and you see 4 and 5-year-olds, and I'm sorry to say this, but it's mostly straight white women doing this. Mm-hmm. They're bringing their kids to this. And you got dancing condoms walking down Colfax. You got people grinding on each other walking down Colfax. You got people in the Pride Parade acting out BDSM. Why are we allowing children to see that stuff? And at that age, why are we confusing them with gender confusion by exposing them to drag queens? I remember the first time I saw RuPaul. I was probably 11 years old. Thankfully, at this point in time, RuPaul was someone that came on at 11 o'clock at night on VH1. Do you know how long it took me to figure out what that was? I don't believe in that type of stuff, and I don't believe that children should be exposed to it. At Pride, at Drag Queen Storytime, or in our schools. And that's the other thing. A lot of people want to say, oh my gosh, you guys are just a bunch of hate group, far-right extremist hate groups. Just so y'all know, we have Democrats, we have Republicans, we have Libertarians, we have unaffiliated, we have black people, white people, Christians, Jewish people. And you know why? Because all of this stuff that's happening, it transcends our ideology politically and spiritually, because our children are important and worth protecting. And we don't believe that, look, First Amendment still applies. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, I do not agree with book bans, but what I do think is in our schools, the books that are in our school libraries and in our school classrooms need to be educational. After all, it is called a school, and it needs to be age appropriate. So that's where we stand with that. I'm gonna email Valdemar, I'm gonna email you my PowerPoint, you can share it. So with that, what's been going on at the state legislature? How many of you here that have heard the saying, all politics are local politics? And I hope you are paying attention to what is happening in the state legislature. Unless you live in Southwest Colorado, I know you get everything from New Mexico.
We actually have a really good group within the plot that watches the legislature really hard.
Good. Also, let's flip that seat red.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but McLaughlin's gotta go.
She's
not running again.
She turns out.
I know, but we gotta flip that red.
Yes. And the one who's running to replace her is followed right along with the drag queen story hours.
Yeah, we gotta change that. Who's running? Who in the Republican Party is gonna run?
So we have a really good candidate. His name is Clark Craig. I actually serve on the HC Defense Committee, and Ron's the secretary. And so we are fighting tooth and nail to put that seat in.
I need to talk to him.
Yes.
Look next week for my editorial in the Durango Herald and the Cortez Journal. We're gonna rip McLaughlin a new one because of what happened this week at the state capitol.
Yep.
House Bill 1017 passed. 1017 is a foster children's Bill of Rights. How many of you heard about that one? This one requires foster parents to use the preferred names and pronouns of children in foster care. And here's what's happening. Even in states like Montana, the state's coming in and they're saying, oh, well, as a parent, you didn't affirm your child's name or gender ideology, and that's child abuse. And they're removing these children from their parents' home and guardianship, placing them in state custody. And the state is now saying, well, you are now going to be affirmed, because if you're going to be a foster parent, we're going to require you to affirm gender ideology. Not reality, gender ideology. And the science is pretty clear that 90% of youth who are allowed to go through this process without being forced into transitioning will grow up and not identify as transgender, but just gay and lesbian. This is a modern form of conversion therapy that's happening right now. It passed. Again, going back to that First Amendment and the freedom of speech, we are compelling the speech of foster parents under the guise of LGBTQ inclusion. House Bill 24-1039. You're nodding your head. You know about this one too. 1039 passed. 1039 requires teachers to affirm pronouns and names. And if you didn't sit in that committee, when I was there in that committee, I submitted written testimony that had 105 peer-reviewed journal articles that talked about the harm of gender ideology. And I said in my oral testimony that if this committee, which claims to believe in science, will take a look at my research that I submitted, and they voted along party lines.
Yep.
If you listen to my testimony, I specifically introduced myself as Dr. Rich Guggenheim, an out and proud member of the LGBTQ community. And I went to the science, because the Democrats love to say, oh, we're all about science. Well, yeah, you're all about science when it will conform to your agenda. When you can use science to advance your agenda, you're all for it, but when it goes against your agenda, you're gonna deny it. House Bill 1040 was to conduct a study on the effects of transitioning and gender ideology on young people in Colorado. I said this is an amend